Hi there, good afternoon, and welcome. Welcome to our strategic launch with NCFE. We've titled this webinar launch as the V Cert Revolution, how Pupil Progress and NCFE are transforming assessment tracking in 2025. So for those NCFE centres that are tuning in, this is a great opportunity to learn about a very specific offer to your centres. And for those considering NCFE V Cert qualifications, this would also be a great one to tune into to learn what is on offer given the new launch of this partnership. So yeah, I mean, the first one, this is really a game-changing collaboration for NCFE centres and those that are looking to become an NCFE centre, because what we've actually done, we've got a shared vision for innovation for assessment and tracking, and we've built and designed modular skills-based tracking aligned completely against the V Cert qualifications. So exactly how the exam board would want you to track and monitor those grades is exactly what is on offer here, because you'll have that in a modular tracker that you can just plug and play and enter those raw marks in to see which grade the students are at. So it's designed very specifically for that vocational learning. This is about planning. It's not just reporting. So you're going to have real-time component level insights for proactive support and feeling far more confident about those resets. And that's because the information that you're getting is live. You'll have live dashboards that provide you insights into which students to target and will inform that level of planning to then get that confident reset. And the idea is that it's a collaborative approach. It empowers your learners because they are going to get comprehensive reports. So it's not just a raw mark at the end of a term, or it's not just that whole grade that they're a level 1 distinction. They're actually going to get detail that informs them of why they're working at a set grade and what they would need to do to improve. It will help, raising standards leads and leaders of those subject areas actually inform leadership on where students are in those in that journey in their V Certs. And we'll actually start to connect all of the NCFE centres. So, we will have, as the schools join and start using Pupil Progress to dissect those students, you'll actually be able to get some really insightful information, because you've got a very set way of looking at the data. There's a real shared mission there to provide students with more accurate data and information to exert their own influences and trajectories on their kind of educational careers. And as we join, you'll have that shared mission in achieving that. So actually, how is it going to improve in terms of smarter tracking, and how is it going to empower your school in terms of that tracking process? And I've actually uploaded a visual here which will support that. So at the moment, and perhaps not indicative of every school, but most schools will be picking up a form of spreadsheet, might be a Google Sheet or a Microsoft Excel, and we will try to map a form of tracker against that V Cert qualification. Now, Excel was built and designed for finance managers and accountants, and it wasn't educator purposeful. So actually what we're doing is removing and replacing the need to spend lots of hours on a spreadsheet to build out that tracker in line with the V Cert qualifications exactly. And we're providing you with that actually enables you to then not have to enter that data into your MIS system. Now, if you wanted to, you still can. There's a functionality within Pupil Progress that will enable you to directly export that data. But instead of sitting there manually entering that this student's a level 1, this student's a level 2, you can actually just focus on having that data in one place as a single point of entry. Now, as I mentioned, students are going to get quite a comprehensive report, and I'm going to show you this shortly. But what it also replaces the need for that report generation in the MIS system. because all of that is live and automated for you also. And then lastly, where you actually pull this out into a form of analytics, you know, might be using one of the top end analytical tools. We've actually, you know, got that information inside the software as well. So we're essentially removing that need for the data drop and all of that heavy lifting and transactional activity to move data between platforms. And you're actually going to have it all housed neat and tidy inside one. So if, for example, you're delivering the health and social care V Cert qualification, then you'll have that tracker inside Pupil Progress. You have all of the accurate data that's pulled from that tracker. It's going to be live, not necessarily the need to push that into the MIS. If you still choose to, that can be bulk exported in. And actually, you've got live dashboards that tell you where those students are working at, and you know, the granular detail on how to move them forward as well. So we're really capturing it with a smarter way of working, as opposed to the historic way, which is spreadsheet, move it into an MIS, analyze it elsewhere on you know, a wider analytical tool. So some of the thinking might be at the moment, well, is actually I need to see this, I need to see how I'm actually going to benefit from this. And that's what I want to look at now, is actually dive into Pupil Progress as a software and share with you the V Cert qualifications inside, so you can see actually, you know, this is how, and we start to connect the dots on how we're actually move this forward. So if I just moved into here, we should now see the software itself. So the first thing to know at the top here is if, for example, you lead across a trust, or there is a vocational lead across the trust, or you're delivering qualifications across a number of schools, you actually have the ability to house all of the V certs in your different schools, and you can navigate from one computer you know, inside of those. So if, for example, you're running some preparations for your moderations and you actually want to cross-reference that against a similar qualification, you can navigate between those schools, see what the data is saying, and you know, look at those the work that's been produced in line with that. So what I've actually done here is we've built an NCFE Academy, and I've just clicked into this for the purpose of the demonstration. And what you can see here is we've built in all of the NCFE V Cert qualifications, and you've got this here. So we could actually then just start to filter out, for example, child development. And we can see here that we've synced with your school's MIS to pull through. So you know when, for example, you have a new joiner and you have to then add them into your spreadsheet and you have to move their data across, and then a student leaves and we're having to do all of that update manually. This is a sync whereby all of that is done for you. So we've pulled here Dr. Davies class, and the amount of students that are there, and that's reading live from your MIS. So if it's Arbor or Bromcom or Sims, we're pulling that information down into Pupil Progress, and it's synced every 24 hours, so you don't have to do that manual lifting. And then what we can do is actually go inside the live tracker, and this now, and I want to be really clear, it has been built for you. So you don't have to build anything out on a spreadsheet. We have mapped the qualification structure inside of Pupil Progress. So you've got the non-examined assessment, which is 50% here, and the examined assessment, which is also 50% here. So if I expand this, it will have all of those subsections inside the tracker. And then this is the only thing that's required. I enter those raw marks into the tracker, and the tracker will now calculate a grade exactly as the examining body would do. So in this instance here, I can see that this is now a level 1 distinction. And actually, if I was to move and push in some more data, you'll see in real time how this would then start to update based on the information and how the students have performed in their assessment. So in this instance, it's a level 2 merit. And if we actually just reduce the noise here and then opened up the topic summary, just want to reduce here, what you're seeing here is, again, in real time, the percentage of marks that have been achieved in those overarching themes of the qualification. And I've got this at the moment at a subtopic level, And what we could actually do is where I see a weaker area, so I can see that where this student has been asked questions on planning early years childcare, they've only achieved 62% of the available marks. I can open this up and I would be able to start to see where the students have underperformed in those key areas based on the assessments that you add in. And that's not there at the moment because I haven't added an assessment with that detail. It would be there when you would do so. So that is like a running commentary of how students are performing across the qualification. The key bit to note here is that we've uploaded all of the target grades for the students. So we will do that for you. And actually then it will start to RAG rate in line with their performance. So you can see here, this student is on a level 2 merit and it's flagged up as blue because it's outperforming their target of a level 2 pass. We've covered all of the scaled scores and all of the conversions for you. So you don't have to worry about running those complex formulae inside a spreadsheet, and you can just lean on this to then look at how we're going to move students forward, as opposed to figuring out, have we got that accurate grade in the first place? This is providing you exactly the accurate information that you need. And the question that you might have is, which grade boundaries are you using for this to get that accurate data? What we actually do is we go to the tools toggle along the side. We scroll up to grade boundaries and we press change. And from here, we've uploaded the grade boundaries that NCFE V Certs have released. Okay, so you can then change this and you can see how the raw marks are affecting on each part of the qualification and then the summary overall. And if you wanted to, you can also add a percentage tolerance to that as well. So we could add a 3% buffer on top of the latest grade boundary series. And all of that will pull through into here. Now, one of the great motivators is actually being able to see how far away the student is from the next available grade. So we can see here that this student is 14 marks away from a level 2 distinction. And we can actually use that information alongside our understanding of the student pastorally to give more accurate and more enhanced level of predictions. So, if we know where these 14 marks are going to come from, we know the trajectory that student is on, it might be that we're actually quite confident in handing out that level 2 distinction as a teacher predicted grade here, which we can see would then go to 1 above where they are. Okay. Now, as you start to evolve, and it might be that you've come to the NEA section, I've actually popped in a practice test there. I'll just remove that for a second. But as we start to sit this section here, you can actually type in the raw marks. And again, you'll start to see how all of this changes. So you'll start to see, actually, now we've moved backwards. And because this is a live system, we might want to use that to update that prediction and not leave it between those data points, from 3 months ago. And that is the idea. We will need to start thinking differently about how we track and monitor now. So as opposed to those data points that I was previously alluding to, you can actually now start to see here how a live system can be really useful in terms of adjusting and tweaking and knowing what needs to be done to move young people forward. So for example, got 15 marks here to get them back to a level 2 merit. Well, actually, where are those 15 marks going to come from? And I might decide to open up here. And I can see, there's 4 marks available in this section, and the student is only getting 2. So I might want to, reteach and re-deliver this area so they can get full marks during their resits. And I can strategically plan where the best 14 marks would come from in order for them to get that grade. Now, where this becomes really powerful is when you've now got a full data set here, and we can actually start to do some really interesting things in terms of ranking the students. So if I click on this icon here, for example, I can see that it's now put in ascending order of all those students that achieve full marks down to all of those students that achieve less marks. And what we might want to do is actually feature these students in an intervention. And we might want to tag these students. So what we can do, and this is the idea of tracking and monitoring, is that we can go tools and we can go enable tagging. and we can press configure. And then I can create a new tag that in T1, students receive less than 2 marks, for example, and you can name this as you will. And I can press save and close and save and close. And what that will enable me to do, because I've already got these students in order, I can now see a tagged feature along the side, and I can tag the students that I want to feature in that intervention. So as a teaching staff or a middle leader or a raising standards lead, we can actually now strategically plan our tagged groups. And what it means is that later on, we can actually come down and filter by the tag that we've created. So we can have a very focused group of those 4 students against that tag that we've created for them. And we know that that's an area that we need to look at. The key bit here is this is all great so far, but it's quite binary in the sense of it's telling me as the teaching staff or the RSL information back on what I would need to do. Students are key in this journey, and it's about translating this information to them so they can have, and it's their qualification, and we want to empower them to make decisions for themselves. So what we can actually do is click on this icon next to the student name, and what that will do is translate all of that information into a report. Now, what I've got here at the moment is a booklet that students will receive. So if you've got a number of students on V Cert qualifications, then they could actually receive a booklet like this. And actually, if it was just one of them, so if I actually pop down to that child development course here, the student would see something like this. And this is really important because, and it's where it changes. Instead of getting a report at the 3 points in the year to say that you are a level 2 distinction in child development and early years, they can actually see why they're working at that grade, how many marks off they are the next grade, and where they could actually start to find those marks. So we can see that we're outperforming here in the exam and assessment, and perhaps the NEA section is an area we should look at. And actually, if I look down here, it's maybe AO4, the apply and vocational skills processes, work practice and documentation that we would need to look at. And within those questions that we took, we can start to see where some of those marks would be gained. So for example, here, 6 marks were achieved out of a possible 8. So there's 2 marks here. And I think this makes a really good lesson where students would have this report and they can actually start to highlight some of these areas where they can look to improve. And we're giving them the information they need to, make their own decisions and be confident in why they're making those decisions. But it also has a really powerful effect on their motivation. Not only is it their name against the qualification they're running, and it's information that's personal to them, but when we start to turn around and say, well, actually, we are holding that intervention session that's very specific on these questions that you've got wrong, and if you turn up to them, you can actually start to see that will close in on that grade. Well, that's great because I'm now motivated to turn up to that intervention because I can connect the dots on why you're asking me to come there and the output that it's going to give me. And it is about creating that understanding for a young person, as opposed to just being a name on an intervention list, or you're asking a student to come back because they're on the list. So I just want you to imagine now empowering your students with information and reports like this that can actually give them we're including all key stakeholders, and this we've seen this work really positively with parents at parents evening, where the level of conversation and the depth of conversation is now much richer because we're talking about how we we're talking about the learning, we're talking about how we can improve in certain areas, and we can have a very focused, you know, actions and very focused steps on what they can do to take away. It's also worth noting here, we can have learning characteristics down the side. So you can start to track homework, behavior, effort, and it actually acts as what I like to refer to as a progress matrix, which is, we look at the horse fourth quadrant in terms of effort and attainment. We can actually start to align that across all of the subjects in one report and then have the detail to know how to improve them. So very powerful tool that will be available to you as an NCFE centre. So we've replaced perhaps our current spreadsheet. We've got detailed reports that are being generated, and perhaps doesn't need to be through the MIS, or it could be attached to the MIS. But what we've also got is the ability now to have a live dashboard to see where these students are working, and how we're looking at, vocationally as a school, running our V Certs, what this looks like in practice. So we can see the A8 and P8 scores being pulled through. We can see the percentage of students that are working above, on, one grade away, and off target. And we can see this cumulatively as a graph. We have our cumulative data here. So how many students are on a level 1 distinction? How many are on a level 1 distinction or better? And what is that in terms of our percent versus where do we need to be if all students were on target? And perhaps most insightfully, we've now got the demographic of these students to actually tune in and be able to filter out some really key students to move us forward. So for example here, I can see that my lower attainers of 12 students, I've got 50% of them that are on target or above. And actually, I've got 50% of my higher attainers that are, albeit only 4 students, that are off target. And actually, middle attainers, also. So perhaps there's not enough stretch and challenge here. Perhaps this is something we need to target as an area. So what we can actually then do is go back and we can open a year group overview. Now, I don't actually have data for one of those classes for the demonstration, so you will see some gaps. But we can then filter out that, and that dashboard has given me a direction. And then we can filter out those key students. So I can say, well, prior attainment is higher, and apply the filter. And then I've got those key students and data that I can start to work with. And I can see then what is common across those students. So for example, what immediately strikes me is, why is this higher attaining student only achieving 1 mark out of an available 4, whereas this student achieves full marks? And we're running these cross comparisons so we can then deliver precise teaching, which is, what do the students exactly need to go back to? And what do we need to, in terms of closing those gaps and driving attainment, where is there? Because they're not the same. And we can target this very specifically, and do what we need to do. And again, we could then loop back to the tagging. We could create tags for those set students as well. I'll just pop back to one of the trackers here, and it's worth noting, and this is where we start to close the circle, that you can actually upload learning resources. So enable links and actions. We can press configure, we can create a new item. And what this will do is enable us as teachers to either add a link or create an action for students to then go and close their own gap. So for example, if I've tagged 4 students that are underperforming in that first question or one part of their NEA, I can actually upload a resource, and then we can upload this and we can save and close, and then students can have access to that via an app, and they would actually start to close their own gaps in learning. So we're providing them, particularly trying to build that independent learner, we can upload that information there. Now, if I loop back and we're looking more top level here, I can actually view a grade summary, and that will be all of the students in a chosen year group across the V Certs that are being delivered in the school. And we can start to see how students are performing against their target area. So I might want to again click here and have students in that order of data to see how they're performing and which students are on target or off target. We can also see an average here, which is pulled as a class average. So we might decide where to reallocate resources and time, maybe some CPD for these learners. And again, same functionality applies where you can actually, filter out key students, or we might say compared to their target grade, for example, in health and social care, we want to look at those students that are one grade away. And as you can see there, we've got health and social care, and they are the students that are amber, which are one grade away. And we might want to target those to tip them to be on target. And again, we would come back, open up that tracker, and we can run the same functionality in here. So compared to target grade, currently working one grade away, add that as a filter, and we've got that set student that's in here. We can see by how many raw marks, so we've actually got some quicker wins here and maybe a bit more work to do with Doria and Elizabeth. But the key bit, and this is what sets it apart, is what do they need to learn? What do we need to reteach? What needs to happen next in that classroom to move these young people forward? I'm going to pause there and actually just circle back to the slide deck for a moment. And actually, if you like what you're seeing there and you can see the value and the benefit to having a system like that to track your V Cert qualifications, there is, through the partnership, an exclusive offer for NCFE centres. And that is tracking for 2 V Certs at zero cost. You will get access to everything that I've just demonstrated to you at zero cost. So all you would need to do is go to, you can scan this QR code, or you can visit the Pupil Progress website, and on solutions, you'll see solutions for NCFE partner schools, and you would just need to book a call, and we will get you set up, and then you would have access to what you've just seen for 2 of your V Certs at zero cost. It can be any 2 subject areas. So if you're delivering 4 of the V Certs, you choose which V Certs that you would want to choose from, and there are the opportunity to upgrade to all of your V Certs. But you do have the opportunity now to access this immediately at zero cost. Now, it's not just that you will get that and you're kind of left to, figure it out yourself. You have a dedicated account manager, and they will provide you with training and support for all of your teaching staff delivering that qualification. And that is constant. That is, any time you can just book a call with a member of the team and your account manager, and you can look at, how to look at the interventions, for example, and you can go through on a one-to-one call there. So yeah, if you haven't done so already, go into this, you can scan, book a call in the diary. A member of the team will set you up, and you'll be handed over to an account manager, who will then get all of your students up and running, and you can start to track in this way. Now, if we're still thinking, well, actually, I haven't actually heard from anyone that delivers this. I haven't, heard of Pupil Progress before. I didn't realize that this was accessible to me, and I don't know if it's going to work. We're actually looping back here to the Assessment Innovation Fund, and this was a pilot that was run with Pupil Progress. And the first 2 that I've uploaded here is actually some qualitative data from 2 senior leaders. And I'll give you a moment just to read what they've said so far as part of this this pilot where we introduced Pupil Progress to NCFE schools and centres to run and actually examine the benefits of tracking and monitoring with Pupil Progress. And again, this is qualitative data. This was one-to-one interviews with these members of staff, but we also might want to look at the quantitative data. And what we did is pushed out a survey to those pilot schools, and there was a number of different questions that were asked them, and this was some of the feedback. So based on the 37 teachers across the 12 schools involved in the pilot, we asked the teachers this, and whether Pupil Progress enabled them to have more supportive, action-focused conversations using that data. We can see here that 60% agreed and 24% strongly agreed with that as a notion. And during those conversations, of those 84% that agreed or strongly agreed, they often referred to things like the transparency of the data, the time it took to get that information back into the hands to make decisions, and those targeted actions through that tagging tool. We then moved on to the next question, which was about the confidence to address kind of key areas of underachievement. And you can see here that, a huge proportion of teachers across the schools in the pilot agreed that by having Pupil Progress track and monitor their qualifications allowed them to address those areas of underachievement with their students. And we looked very specifically at this targeted support, and we looked at the tagging, and we also found here that where students were tagged, it had a really positive impact in the difference between their mocks. And we compared the difference between marks between mock 1 and mock 2. And all apart from the maths higher here, you can see the percentage difference that has taken place from tagged students versus non-tagged students. So there's a clear methodology here that we know improves, smarter tracking. We know that the method here to, get a really clear understanding of those students that are underperforming in key areas can be highlighted. We know that students can have access to that same information, and parents can have access to that same information. And ultimately, we are using that to improve the outcomes of our young people by having the ability to have that precise level of understanding and then being able to apply precise teaching. And this has all come through the strategic partnership with NCFE, and allowing you as NCFE centres to now gain access to this for 2 of your V Cert subjects, any 2 that you choose, to actually see it for yourself. So what I'll do is I'll leave this on the screen here, just on how to get started. Again, if you scan the QR code or head on over to Pupil Progress, you can book in a call, you can ask some more questions, you can have a one-to-one with us, and we can get you up and running with this new offering. So it's super excited to have partnered with NCFE, and be able to bring you as NCFE centres this great opportunity to enhance that level of tracking and monitoring. I'll pause it there, and I'll actually leave it there, and look forward to meeting with some of you on those one-to-one calls, just as we kind of tune out for this quick one. But yeah, it is now live, so now is the time to move forward with this. It's fully up and running, and we're looking forward to meeting with the schools and driving attainment. Thanks very much, everyone.